Adam Keller stood in the rain, holding a cardboard box that contained everything he had earned in 8 years at Meridian Industries. He was 36 years old, a single father, and as of 4:17 that afternoon, unemployed. The termination letter cited corporate restructuring, but the security guard who escorted him out couldn't meet his eyes. By the time Adam pulled into his apartment complex, a notice was already taped to his door. Eviction. 30 days. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, pressed her face against the window of their car, watching him read the paper twice. 3 times, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something survivable. "Daddy," she whispered when he climbed back in, rain dripping from his hair. "What do we do now?" He had no answer. A black SUV glided past them on the wet pavement, and through its tinted window, a woman with auburn hair glanced out. Vivian Hart, the new CEO. Her eyes lingered on the father and daughter for just a moment longer than they should have, and something in her expression shifted, though she said nothing, and the SUV carried her away into the gray afternoon. The Human Resources office smelled like stale coffee and carpet cleaner. Adam had arrived 15 minutes before opening, hoping to speak with someone, anyone, who might help him understand what had happened. He had worked at Meridian since he was 28, starting in the mailroom, working his way up to facilities coordinator. His performance reviews had been consistently positive. His attendance record was nearly flawless, save for the 3 days he took when Lily had pneumonia 2 winters ago. None of it mattered now. The woman behind the desk barely looked up when he approached. Her nameplate read Deborah Stanton, Human Resources Assistant Director. Adam explained his situation calmly, methodically. He asked if there might be a different position available, something in another department, perhaps a lower pay grade. He wasn't proud. He just needed to keep working, to keep his daughter fed and housed. Deborah shuffled some papers without reading them. Her voice was flat when she finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Mr. Keller, there's nothing available for someone in your situation." Adam asked what that meant, his situation. Deborah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "This company is moving in a new direction. Some people just aren't the right fit anymore. I'm sure you understand." He didn't understand. He stood there for a long moment, waiting for something more. Some explanation that made sense, but Deborah had already turned back to her computer, her fingers clicking across the keyboard as if he had already left, as if he had never been there at all. That night, Adam drove to the edge of town where there was a quiet parking lot behind a shuttered grocery store. It was safer than sleeping on the street, and dark enough that no one would notice a car parked there overnight. Lily had been quiet since they left the apartment, her small backpack clutched in her lap. It held everything she had been able to carry. A stuffed rabbit named Professor Buttons, 3 books from the library that were now overdue, a photograph of her mother, who had died when Lily was 2. Adam reclined the passenger seat as far as it would go, and laid out the blankets he had grabbed from the apartment. He tucked them around Lily carefully, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. She looked up at him with eyes that were too old for her face. "Are we going to be okay, Daddy?" Adam forced himself to smile. "We're going to be fine, sweetheart. This is just temporary, like camping." Lily nodded slowly, though they both knew she didn't believe him. She fell asleep eventually, her small hand curled around the ear of Professor Buttons. Adam stayed awake, watching the rain streak down the windshield, listening to the occasional rumble of a truck passing on the highway. He thought about his wife, Elena, what she would say if she could see them now. How ashamed he felt that he couldn't give their daughter anything better than the back seat of a 12-year-old Honda. The next morning, Adam drove back toward the Meridian complex to use the public restroom at the gas station across the street. It was the only place nearby with running water and a door that locked. He parked in the far corner of the lot, where the shadows from the building kept the car hidden from casual view. Lily was still asleep in the back. He watched her for a moment, her face peaceful in the gray morning light, and felt something tighten in his chest. She deserved so much more than this. She deserved a room of her own, a bed with clean sheets, a father who could provide for her. He was about to step out of the car when he saw the black SUV pull into the Meridian parking lot across the street, the same SUV from yesterday. It stopped near the main entrance, and Vivian Hart emerged. She was wearing a tailored gray coat and carrying a leather briefcase. She walked with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her place in the world. But then she paused, her gaze sweeping across the street, landing on the old Honda parked in the shadow of the gas station. Adam froze. For a long moment, Vivian simply stared. Her expression was unreadable from this distance, but something about her posture changed. The set of her shoulders, the angle of her head. She wasn't just looking at them, she was seeing them. Then her assistant appeared at her elbow, gesturing toward the building, and Vivian turned away. But as she walked through the glass doors of Meridian Industries, she glanced back one more time. Her face was troubled. 3 days later, Vivian sat alone in her corner office on the 32nd floor, surrounded by reports she didn't want to read. The restructuring had been her decision. Well, not entirely her decision. The board had pressured her for months to cut costs, to trim the workforce, to make Meridian lean and efficient. She had reviewed the termination lists herself, trusting that her management team had made fair, data-driven choices. Now she wasn't so sure. She pulled up the file on Adam Keller, facilities coordinator, 8 years of service. His performance metrics were solid. His supervisor evaluations were consistently positive. There was nothing in his record that justified termination, let alone the immediate kind that stripped him of severance and benefits. Vivian scrolled through the documentation, looking for the reason he had been flagged for removal. She found it in an appendix labeled Low Performance Indicators. The numbers claimed that Adam had missed dozens of shifts, that his work quality had declined significantly, that multiple complaints had been filed against him. None of it matched what she saw in his actual personnel file. The discrepancy was glaring. Either someone had made a serious clerical error, or someone had deliberately falsified the data. Vivian pulled up the internal security footage from the week before the layoffs. She fast-forwarded through hours of mundane office activity until she found what she was looking for. A meeting in Conference Room B between two of her senior managers, Richard Polk and Gregory Sims. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Richard handing Gregory a manila folder. Gregory opened it, scanned the contents, and nodded. Then he walked directly to his computer and began typing. Vivian cross-referenced the timestamp with the system logs. Gregory had accessed Adam Keller's personnel file at that exact moment. He had changed the performance metrics. He had added false complaints. He had turned a loyal, competent employee into someone who looked expendable. Vivian leaned back in her chair, her stomach turning. She thought about the man and the little girl she had seen in the rain, the cardboard box, the eviction notice. She thought about how casually she had signed the termination papers, trusting that her team had done their due diligence. Her signature was on those documents, her name, her authority. Whatever had happened to Adam Keller, she was responsible. She had put him and his daughter on the street. The question now was why Richard and Gregory had wanted him gone so badly, and what they were trying to hide. The investigation took Vivian down a rabbit hole she hadn't expected. Budget discrepancies. Phantom invoices for services never rendered. Shell companies that traced back to offshore accounts controlled by Richard Polk's brother-in-law. Adam Keller's crime, it turned out, was noticing too much. His job in facilities gave him access to the loading docks, the supply rooms, the areas where equipment and materials passed through without much oversight. He had filed 3 separate reports about suspicious deliveries, shipments that didn't match the purchase orders, boxes that arrived empty but were logged as full. Each time, his concerns had been dismissed, and now she understood why. Adam hadn't been fired for poor performance. He had been fired because he was a threat to the people who were stealing from the company. Vivian sat with that knowledge for a long time. She could have buried it. She could have let Adam Keller remain a casualty of restructuring and focused on cleaning up the corruption quietly, without admitting that the layoffs had been compromised. It would have been easier, safer. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw that little girl's face pressed against the car window. And she heard her own voice, cool and professional, approving a list of names without question. The first thing Vivian did was find them, not through official channels. She didn't want anyone at Meridian to know what she was doing, not yet. She hired a private service, discreet and professional, to locate Adam Keller and his daughter. The report came back within 24 hours. They were still in the city, moving from parking lot to parking lot, staying one step ahead of security guards and police patrols. Adam had found work at the harbor, loading cargo for cash. 12-hour shifts that paid barely enough to keep gas in the car and food in their stomachs. Lily spent most of her days in the public library, where the heating was free and the librarians let her stay as long as she was quiet. Vivian drove to the harbor on a Tuesday morning. She parked her car a block away and walked the rest of the distance, her heels clicking on the wet concrete. She found Adam stacking crates in a warehouse that smelled like fish and diesel. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner. There were dark circles under his eyes and a new wariness in the way he held himself. She watched him for a few minutes before he noticed her. When he finally looked up, his expression went from confusion to recognition to something cold and closed. He set down the crate he was carrying and walked toward her slowly. "You're the CEO," he said. It wasn't a question. Vivian nodded. "My name is Vivian Hart. I need to speak with you, Mr. Keller." Adam's jaw tightened. "About what? Coming to make sure I'm not causing problems? Don't worry, I'm not going to sue. I couldn't afford a lawyer even if I wanted one." Vivian shook her head. "That's not why I'm here." She hesitated, searching for the right words. 8 years of boardroom negotiations hadn't prepared her for this conversation. "I'm here because I made a mistake. And I'm trying to understand what happened." Adam laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What happened is your company threw me out like garbage. What happened is my daughter sleeps in a car now. You want to understand that." His voice cracked on the last word, and he turned away, running a hand over his face. Vivian stood very still. She could have defended herself. She could have explained about the falsified records, the corruption, the board pressure, but none of that would matter to him. None of that would give him back the weeks he had lost, the dignity that had been stripped from him. So she simply said, "I'm sorry." Adam turned back to her, his eyes wet. "Sorry doesn't put a roof over my daughter's head." That evening, Vivian found them at the community center on Maple Street. It was one of the few places in the city that offered free showers and a hot meal, no questions asked. She spotted Adam sitting at a plastic table near the back, watching Lily eat a bowl of soup. The little girl was talking animatedly about a book she had read at the library. Something about a princess who learned to sword fight. Adam was nodding along, a small smile on his face despite everything. He noticed Vivian approaching, and the smile faded. He stood up, positioning himself between her and Lily. "I thought I made myself clear this morning." Vivian held up her hands. "I'm not here to argue. I brought something." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were printouts of the falsified records, the security footage, timestamps, the internal memos that proved Adam had been targeted. She set the folder on the table and slid it toward him. "I found out why you were really fired," she said quietly. "It wasn't about performance or restructuring. You were asking questions about deliveries that didn't add up. Someone didn't like that." Adam stared at the folder but didn't touch it. "What are you talking about?" Vivian explained everything. The phantom invoices, the shell companies, Richard Polk and Gregory Sims, and the money they had been siphoning from Meridian for at least 2 years. Adam's reports had gotten too close to the truth, so they had manufactured a reason to remove him. And Vivian, trusting her team, had signed off on it without a second glance. Adam was silent for a long time. Lily had stopped eating, watching the two adults with wide, uncertain eyes. Finally, Adam picked up the folder. He flipped through the pages slowly, his hands trembling slightly. When he reached the falsified performance report with his name on it, he stopped. "This says I missed 40 shifts last year," he said. "I didn't miss a single day. I was there every morning at 6:30, every single morning." His voice broke. "They just made it up. All of it. They made me look like someone I'm not." Vivian nodded. "I know. And I'm going to fix it." Adam looked up at her, his expression raw. "How? How do you fix this?" "My savings are gone. My credit is destroyed. My daughter doesn't have a home." "How do you fix any of that?" Vivian met his eyes steadily. "I don't know yet. But I'm going to try. I'm going to take this to the board, expose what Polk and Sims did, and clear your name publicly. And whatever happens next, you're not going to face it alone." She glanced at Lily, who was clutching her spoon like a lifeline. "Neither of you." Adam shook his head slowly. "Why? Why do you care? I'm nobody to you. I'm just a name on a spreadsheet." Vivian was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than it had been all evening. "Because I'm the one who signed that spreadsheet. Because your daughter asked me something today that I can't stop thinking about." Adam frowned. "What did she ask you?" Vivian's throat tightened. "She asked if I was the reason her father cried at night."